Hello, welcome back to the Coffee Break with the Ambassador, our special program from TVRI. And this episode, this time, we would like to invite you to visit to the residence of Singaporean Ambassador, and we will meet and talk with the Ambassador. And why don't you just follow me to go inside and let's meet the Ambassador. Singapore is a country in the Southeast Asia, located in 137 kilometers or 85 miles north of the equator, at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula, with Indonesia's Riau Islands to the south and Peninsula Malaysia to the north. Singapore territory consists of one main island along with 62 other islands. Since independence, extensive land reclamation has increased its total size by 130 square kilometers or 50 square miles. Indonesia and Singapore relations are foreign bilateral relations. The two countries established formal diplomatic relations on September 7, 1967, a month after the formations of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN on August 8, 1967. Indonesia and Singapore are two of the 5 founding members of ASEAN, including Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Both nations are also members of the non-aligned movement in APEC. Over the years, Indonesia and Singapore have maintained regular exchanges of high-level visits underpinned by strong economic cooperation across a wide range of sectors, including health, defense, and the environment. In the past decade, Singapore has consistently been Indonesia's top foreign investor. 2017 marked the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic relations in a celebration event known as Rising 50, an amalgamation of RI for the Republic of Indonesia and SING for Singapore. The first ever combined flypast of 20 fighter jets from the Republic of Singapore Air Force and Tentara Nasional Indonesia Angkatan Udara was also held in the formations of the number of 50. On the economic front, an investment forum was held and 9 memorandums of understandings were signed, including cooperations in education and research, student exchanges, environment, and energy. Halo, selamat sore. Saya ada janji sama Pak Kamsa.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you very
Welcome to the Singapore residence.
Yeah, thank you very much for welcoming us in this residence. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. And how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Shall we? Yes, please, welcome.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Please have a seat.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, thank you very much for welcoming us into your nice residence here.
It's always a pleasure to host our Indonesian friends at the Singapore residence.
Yeah. You know, Your Excellency, last year, 2017, Indonesia and Singapore celebrated its 50th anniversary of bilateral relationship. How would you describe the relationship between Indonesia and Singapore for the past 50 years?
Terima kasih, Pak. Well, as you would know, last year, as you mentioned, we've celebrated 50 years of a very strong and fruitful relationship between Singapore and Indonesia. The acronym that we coined to celebrate this milestone year was Rising 50. RI or RE for Republic of Indonesia and SING for Singapore. So Rising 50 means that our two countries, by working together, have been rising, have been going forward. But it also means that there is still a long way to go for us to achieve even greater success together. And I think over the last 50 years, our two countries have experienced a very close cooperation, G2G, B2B, and P2P at all levels. So now the happy challenge for our two countries would be to see how we can take this relationship forward for another 50 years, or maybe even another 100 years. So indeed, last year was a very important milestone year in the relationship between our two countries.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing in a relationship between two countries would be, number one, to conduct a relationship on the basis of mutual respect. Singapore and Indonesia, I think our two countries are fully aware that we don't agree all the time on everything. Sometimes on certain issues we take different positions because we have different interests. But that does not mean that we cannot cooperate in various areas. And I think with the mutual respect and mutual understanding that there may be differences, our two countries have been able to move forward together. And I see for now and for the immediate future, this is a trend and this is a practice in the relationship that will continue.
Well, Your Excellency, when I first entered the residence, I think this is such a lovely residence. I see so
Thank
many arts and beautiful pieces here. Like I see some Indonesian arts and I see some Chinese and arts. And can you explain to me about the residence?
Well, this is the Singapore residence
Yeah.
here in Indonesia, in the capital city, Jakarta. And of course, my family and I, we are very proud and honored to be here, to stay here, but also to look after the house and to make sure that it is befitting Singapore residence in one of our important neighbors such as Indonesia. Singapore, as you know, is a multiracial, multi-ethnic society. And I think what you see around here in the Singapore residence reflects that. But like Singapore, Indonesia is also a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society. So we are also sure that we will display some items from Indonesia to reflect that aspect of Indonesia's character. So this is a similarity that our two countries share. Why don't we go and take a look at one or two pieces? Yeah? Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, here we have some art pieces. I just want to show you maybe one. This is oil and paint work by one of our famous artists. His name is Andrew Yeo.
Andrew Yu.
He is very famous in Singapore and he is known to put together artwork depicting Singapore's history, historical buildings, historical features in Singapore. I'm a big fan of history.
Yeah.
Because for me, I believe that it's important to know where you are and where you're going, but you also need to know where you came from. So this is one of my favorite paintings. It is of iconic historical building in Singapore. It used to be Victoria Theatre.
Victoria.
Yeah, Victoria Theatre was constructed during the British colonial period.
How does the government support to preserve the historical buildings? You know, in Indonesia we also have Dutch colonialism buildings, and what about in Singapore? How does the government support history?
Yes, as I said, because our colonial past is also part of our heritage. And a lot of these iconic buildings which are still there are very important to remind Singaporeans in terms of how we started out and how these buildings and features are also an important part of our history. Because if you forget your history and you're only in the present and in the future, then that itself is not good in terms of your philosophy, in terms of your values. So this is a very important building, as I said. It has transformed its role in many ways in keeping with how Singapore's history has transformed. Originally, it started out as a kind of official government building, and then later it evolved into a public space for people to have public events, public functions, parties, and then concerts and musical events and performances. At one stage, during the war years, it even served as a hospital.
As a hospital?
Yes, taking care of people who are ill and injured. But one of the most historically important events that happened here was in 1958. 1958 was one of the first times in Singapore's history where our national anthem, Majulah Singapura, so even before we became formally independent, Majulah Singapura was first played here. And there's also an Indonesian connection to it. The person who helped to come up with our national anthem, Bapak Zubir Said, was originally from Indonesia. He was born in
West Sumatra, I believe.
Yes, like you.
Yeah.
So he was born in West Sumatra, I think in Bukit Tinggi.
Yeah.
But in the 1920s, he moved to Singapore. And he played a very important role in our history in coming up with our national anthem, which was played here at the Victoria Theatre many, many years ago for the first time.
Yeah, and somehow it makes me proud to be part of the history itself.
Well, I think it just goes to show the extent to which our two countries are connected at the people-to-people level.
And this is interesting. I will recommend my friends to visit Singapore to the Victoria Hall.
Please do.
Not just shopping.
Yes, that's right. That's right. There's more to life than just shopping.
There's more to life.
Yeah, that's right. Especially in Singapore.
In Singapore, yeah. Well, I also noticed that there are some multi-racial piece of arts here. Some Indonesian, this is Betawi, right? This is from Jakarta.
Yes.
Some from Jogja or Solo.
Yes.
And these are from China.
Yes, we have an eclectic mix, as I said. Singapore and Indonesia are multiracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural societies, but we are in a region, Southeast Asia, which is in a very diverse region in terms of its culture, in terms of its heritage. So, in a very, very small way here in the Singapore residence, we try to show that.
Your Excellency, I believe you are a busy man. You have a very tight schedule. But in your spare time, what do you usually do? What is your hobby?
Well, I have a couple of hobbies. I think it's very important to give nutrition to the mind.
Nutrition to the mind.
Yes, to the body.
The body.
Yes, and also to make sure that you find a way to relax. So there are about 3 things that I do. The first thing I think I want to highlight would be my most passionate hobby from the time I was a boy, which is reading. Yes, it's a great pleasure for me. Maybe we can have a look at some of my books here. Yeah. So as I mentioned, this is our very small library here. I am an avid reader. The challenge for me is to find the time to do it.
So this room is basically your personal space.
Yes. So it is the room where I do my reading, which has nothing to do with my work. Yeah. As you know, in the work of a diplomat or foreign service officer or government official, reading for work is very, very important. Yeah, we read a lot related to our work. But I always try to set aside a certain time of the day, every day, to read something that is completely unrelated to my work. Because just like the muscles in our body, it's very important for our mind to be constantly stimulated, constantly challenged. And for me, at least personally, reading is always something that stimulates my imagination, stimulates my mind. So I make sure that I give myself at least half an hour every day to read something which is, unrelated from what I do at work. It can be fiction, it can be science, but it has to be something that is purely not work related. Books provide nutrition for the mind.
Yes.
But you can't just live with nutrition for the mind. So we need nutrition for the body and the stomach. Let's have a look at some Singapore food.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go. Well, this is the formal dining area in the residence. Here is where, when we have formal dinners, we host our guests. And this is roughly the kind of a setting that we would have for a meal with our guests. 4 examples of culinary fare from Singapore. As you know, Singapore is a country where food is 24/7 available. Yeah, and good food at affordable prices. Okay, this is Mirabos.
Mirabos, yeah.
This is the famous Singapore laksa. That's the Hainanese chicken rice. Lastly, roti prata.
Roti prata. Do you have, you know that we have many things in common, especially in terms of food. What is your favorite food in Indonesia?
Well, in Indonesia, I've had the privilege of visiting different parts of Indonesia, and I've had a chance to sample so much of your fare, gudeg, you know, for example, in Java, but somehow the food that always gets to me is nasi uduk.
Nasi uduk.
Nasi uduk because it reminds me of another Singapore favorite, which we have not displayed here, but it's nasi lemak.
Nasi lemak.
Yeah, nasi lemak is a big favorite in Singapore, and when you eat nasi uduk, for me, it reminds me of nasi lemak.
It makes you feel like home.
I feel like I'm very much at home. So that's the Indonesian food that I enjoy tremendously.
Well, I love traveling. That's one of my hobbies, and when I travel to another country, I used to find specific food, like the traditional food, and so these food are recommended. So what about you? Do you travel, Your Excellency, to another country or maybe to Indonesia? What kind of places have you visited in Indonesia?
Well, in Indonesia, I've had the privilege of being able to visit Indonesia from one end to the other. So from Sabang to Merauke. Yes, I've had the privilege. All places are interesting. In some areas similar, some aspects similar. In some aspects very different from one another. But the kind of places which I've have made an impression with me, I would identify two. First of all, Makassar.
Makassar.
Right there in the east, the gateway to eastern Indonesia. Very interesting because of the very strong maritime tradition, maritime culture that is there. The people there are seafaring people, and that has of course been a big part of Indonesia's history and the history of that area. So I've had the privilege of going there, and that's where you can really see a big part of Indonesia's maritime history. Another place that I've been which has made a big impression on me is Solo.
Solo, the palace.
Yes,
the people,
yes.
the food, one package.
The palace, the people, the food, the batik.
The batik.
Yes. So most of all when people say, oh, Javanese culture, Javanese tradition, and so on, how people in Java conduct their lives, I think the place where you can really see it in the very traditional way, still being practiced, I think in my mind at least, is Solo. So it's another place that has made a very big impression on me. Let's have some coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, come on. Please.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So this is the best part, the coffee.
That's right. After a nice afternoon, we ended off with a nice cup of coffee. Yes, please.
Thank you, Your Excellency. All right. My last question is that what do you think about our long-term relationship in the future? What can we do more in the future?
I think one of our challenges in the bilateral relationship is that because we've had 50 years of a very strong, positive relationship, there is a danger that we will start to take it for granted. That we will think that because we have had 50 years of a good relationship, we will have another 50 years easily, just continue doing what we have been doing. I think that's a risk that we face. To prevent that from happening, my personal view based on my experience is that we must continue to try and find ways to bring the people of the two countries closer together. They need to be able to find common areas of interest, shared areas of cooperation. I would emphasize especially for younger people, both in Singapore as well as in Indonesia, because over time, thanks to globalization, thanks to connectivity, our two countries are better connected to the rest of the world. Then we cannot find ourselves in a situation that we lack connection with each other. So on our part, we are trying to find ways to make sure that younger Singaporeans visit Indonesia, interact with their Indonesian friends in education, sports, games, culture, Likewise, we are also hoping that more of our Indonesian friends, young people, will also visit Singapore, not just as tourists, but also to do things together with younger Singaporeans in education, again in music, arts, sports, and so on.
What about scholarship?
We do offer scholarships for Indonesian students, just as we offer scholarships for students from other parts of Asia and ASEAN. And I'm happy to report that there is a very steady and healthy take-up rate for these scholarships, the ASEAN scholarships and so on. So we have friends from Indonesia who study in Singapore, spend a good part of their time there. But these scholarships, many of them have no bond, meaning we know that they will come back to Indonesia and they will contribute here. What we want is the network of friends here, who will have a network of friends in Singapore, and then we can cooperate together. I am very happy that some of my own friends here in Indonesia were friends who studied with me when I was studying in Singapore, and we still maintain the relationship. I think this is something that we want to continue for future generations of Singaporeans as well as Indonesians.
This is really great, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for having us here in your residence. Thank you for the nice hospitality, and I believe that Indonesia and Singapore will develop more and more bilateral relationship in the future, and I think we can do our best for that.
It's our pleasure to host you today here. Thank you very much, and I share your view that Singapore and Indonesia can definitely do a lot more together, and I'm confident that we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Well, that was our visit today and meeting with the Ambassador of Singapore. It was warm, it was nice, and I hope you enjoy our meeting today. And thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you again next time. Goodbye.